Alrighty, party peoples of the interwebs, the sun is setting, so I'm a little short on time, but I have enough time to say
full vindication, baby, booyah.
Viva Frei, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida rumbler, in my home office as the sun sets in beautiful Florida as I prepare to go back to Commie Canada for the holidays. But the news of the day is big Fani Willis just got spanked on the tushy.
Isn't it interesting when we got a bunch of African-American DAs, now we need daddy to tell us what to do? They can keep looking. I'm not interested in them looking. They can look. I'm sorry they pissed off. Justice is now actually blind. Lady Justice is blind. Everybody can get it.
From CNBC, Georgia Appeals Court disqualifies District Attorney Fani Willis from Trump election case, lets indictment stand. Key points. A Georgia appeals court disqualified Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis from overseeing the criminal election interference prosecution of President-elect Donald Trump and other defendants. But the appeals court let stand the indictment against the defendants, who are accused of crimes related to their efforts to overturn Trump's loss in Georgia's 2020 election to President Joe Biden. And there you've got a picture of Fani Willis looking all angry and sassy. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis looks on during a hearing in the case of the state of Georgia versus Donald John Trump at the Fulton County Courthouse on March 1st, 2024 in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, I don't do it often, but when I do it for good reason. Like, for example, when I predicted the Electoral College outcome from the 2024 elections down to one Electoral College, only because I didn't realize that Maine was actually divided into two Electoral College districts, 2 and 1, and that one was the one-off from perfection. I am patting myself on the back for this because I predicted Fani Willis was going to get disqualified at the time, but it seems that Judge McAfee lacked the judicial cojones to do that which needed to be done, and it was so patently obvious that his decision made no sense from the four corners of his own decision, and I said it at the time. Viva Frei, at the Viva Frei, Judge McAfee's ruling us illogical and inconsistent even within the four corners of the judgment itself. 1, there is no evidence of any reimbursement, but Willis's testimony was not, quote, inherently unbelievable, end quote. 2, no conflict even when Willis, quote, repeatedly, end quote, made bad choices and despite an appearance of conflict of interest. 3, Tarrant's testimony disregarded. Yurdi's testimony, quote, lacked context and detail, end quote. Oh yeah, and Fanny's church speech was, quote, legally improper, end quote. But she doesn't get booted from the file. I'm attempting to split baby justice. The judge has killed it. I am also very prone to typos on the internet, as anybody who has been following me for any period of time knows very well. That was supposed to say, in splitting baby justice, the judge has killed it, because the judge killed justice with that idiotic decision. Now, we don't need to go over all the details of the case. This is Fani Willis, who was subject to a motion to disqualify because of her improper relationship with Nathan Wade, her surreptitiously financing Nathan Wade's salary with taxpayer dollars, her sleeping with the guy that was prosecuting Donald Trump. The entire situation was a load of incestuous corruption. Ashley Merchant, attorney extraordinaire, blew this entire case wide open. It became known that Fani Willis was basically paying her boyfriend well above market, then going on trips with her boyfriend that he was paying for with the salary that she was providing him to prosecute Donald Trump. But she said, no, I paid him back for all those vacations in cash because I kept tens of thousands of dollars in cash in her house because that's the advice her daddy gave her, even though she had no evidence for reimbursing her boyfriend for the cash for the trips that she was paying with the salary that she was siphoning from taxpayers. It is mind-blowing corruption that was laid bare for the world to see with the live streaming of that trial. And I would dare say that had that trial not been live streamed, had all of those proceedings not been live streamed for the world to see, I think the outcome would have actually been very, very different.
But I always have cash at the house. That has been, I don't know, all my life. If you're a woman and you go on a date with a man, you better have $200 in your pocket. So if that man acts up, you can go where you want to go. So I keep cash in my house, and I don't keep cash as good in my purse like I used to. I don't go on many dates, but when you go on a date, you should have cash in your pocket.
So my question was, where did that cash originally come from, if it didn't come out of the bank?
Cash is fungible. I've had cash for years in my house. So for me to tell you the source of when it comes from, when you go to Publix and you buy something, you get $50, you throw it in there. It's been my whole life. When I took out a large amount of money on my first campaign, I kept some of the cash of that. Like, to tell you, I just have cash in my house. I don't have as much today as I would normally have, but I'm building back up now. So you just put money in. It's a very good practice. I would advise it to all women.
But getting back to Judge McAfee's illogical and wholly untenable, both in fact and in law judgment, I highlighted certain sections at the time and I said, look, this is going to get overturned on appeals, so I'll be vindicated one day. And when I get vindicated, holy crab apples, I will be taking my victory lap. And today is my victory lap. From Scott McAfee's absolutely idiotic decision at the time. Simply put, the defendants have not presented sufficient evidence indicating that the expenses were not, quote, roughly divided evenly, end quote, or that the district attorney was or currently remains, quote, greatly and pecuniarily interested, end quote, in this prosecution. Later on, in another moment of absolute legal illogicness, is that a word? Without sufficient evidence that the district attorney acquired a personal stake in the prosecution or that her financial arrangements had any impact on the case, the defendant's claims of an actual conflict must be denied. This finding is by no means an indication that the court condones this tremendous lapse in judgment or the unprofessional manner of the district attorney's testimony during the evidentiary hearing. Rather, it is the undersigned's opinion that Georgia law does not permit the finding of an actual conflict simply for making bad choices, even repeatedly, and it is the trial court's duty to confine itself to the relevant issues and applicable law properly brought before it. So according to Judge McAfee, there was an appearance of conflict of interest. There was repeated improper behavior. He goes on later to say that her speech in front of the church was, what did he call that? Legally improper. Despite all of that, there's no actual conflict of interest, and Fani Willis didn't have a pecuniary interest in the prosecution of the case, which I disagree with nonetheless. But bottom line, all of that was totally illogical, even by the facts of the case. The judge has another gem to add a little bit later. With these principles in mind, the court finds that the record made at the evidentiary hearing established that the district attorney's prosecution is encumbered by an appearance of impropriety. This appearance is not created by mere status alone, but comes because of specific conduct and impacts more than a mere, quote, nebulous, end quote, public interest because it concerns a public prosecutor. This is Judge McAfee after the evidentiary hearing, which was broadcast for the world to see. Everybody saw Fani Willis's absolutely disgraceful, rude, improper behavior, both to the court, to the people, and to the judge. The judge says all of that and then says, yeah, but notwithstanding all of that, Fani, you get to stay, but you really should kick your boyfriend from the case. But only after I do yet another round of absolute insane mental gymnastics to disregard the testimony of Terrence Bradley and Ms. Yurdy, who testified to the fact that Fani Willis and Nathan Wade were knocking boots well before they disclosed to the court. In addition, while the testimony of Robin Yurdy raised doubts about the state's assertions, it ultimately lacked context and detail. Even after considering the proffered cell phone testimony from defendant Trump, along with the entirety of the other evidence, neither side was able to conclusively establish by a preponderance of the evidence when the relationship evolved into a romantic one. Bullcrap, Judge McAfee, you were so close to doing the right thing. I said at the time you laid all of the groundwork for the Court of Appeals to do the dirty work that you lacked the judicial cojones to do yourself. And today, the Georgia Court of Appeals did in fact do the dirty work. From the decision, after carefully considering the trial court's finding in its order, we conclude that it erred by failing to disqualify D.A. Willis and her office. The remedy crafted by the trial court to prevent an ongoing appearance of impropriety did nothing to address the appearance of impropriety that existed at times when D.A. Willis was exercising her broad pretrial discretion about who to prosecute and what charges to bring. While we recognize that an appearance of impropriety generally is not enough to support disqualification, this is the rare case in which disqualification is mandated and no other remedy will suffice to restore public confidence in the integrity of these proceedings. Public confidence in these proceedings. That's not just a random throwaway line. That, as far as I'm concerned, is evidence to my theory that had this entire evidentiary hearing not been broadcast to the world, the outcome would have been very different because the world would not have been so outraged at the obvious, patent, and undeniable corruption in the Georgia court system. Had this evidentiary hearing not been broadcast, people would not have been able to see the demeanor of that pure, corrupt Fani Willis. And then the world might not have been so outraged to the point where the Court of Appeal decided that they needed to do what was in fact right all along in order to pacify and restore confidence in the public's assessment of these proceedings. Had it not been broadcast, I don't think this outcome would have been the one that we're living with now. But it was broadcast to the world, and it was amplified by independent legal analysts out there, such as myself, to the point where I think everyone knew what needed to be done because it had been so exposed to the world. And as the propagandist CNBC article rightly observed in the beginning, even though Fani Willis and her entire office is disqualified from this case, they didn't dismiss the indictment in and of itself. So some people are going to say, well, that's a small victory for the judge. It doesn't matter. This is basically now an indictment without an office to prosecute it. And why? Because no district attorney in their right mind is going to pick up the garbage that Fani Willis left for them. This is going to die on the vine. They will never follow through on these charges. So while they didn't dismiss the indictment, it is de facto dismissed because nobody's picking up the mess. So while the Georgia court gives Judge McAfee a bit of a smack on the wrist, they give him a little massage afterwards and said, yeah, you really should have disqualified her entire office, but don't worry, we're going to let the indictment stand. So you were right on that part of your judgment. The appellants contend that the trial court erred in denying their motions to dismiss the indictment. The state responds that the appellants have failed to show that the trial court erred in finding that the appellants had not shown, quote, that their due process rights have been violated or that the issues involved prejudiced them in any way, end quote. Quote, dismissal of an indictment is an extreme sanction used only sparingly for unlawful government conduct, end quote. In the absence of any express statutory authorization, dismissal of an indictment, quote, generally cannot be imposed absent a violation of constitutional right, end quote. While this is the rare case in which D.A. Willis and her office must be disqualified due to a significant appearance of impropriety, we cannot conclude that the record also supports the imposition of the extreme sanction of dismissal of the indictment under the appropriate standard. We therefore affirm the trial court's denial of the appellant's motion to dismiss. And this is the court politely saying, yeah, you really screwed up, Judge McAfee, on not disqualifying Fani and her whole office, but you got this part right, so go home, kiff kiff, even Steven. The bottom line, vindication, baby. Fani Willis is off the case and nobody is taking this case up. And although from what I understand, she can in theory appeal to the higher levels of the Georgia Court of Appeal, it is discretionary as to whether or not they take it. And no court in their right mind is going to take this in this political climate, especially after Donald Trump just got reelected. So another one bites the dust. And before you go anywhere, most importantly, take 3 seconds to go down there, make sure that you're subscribed. If you're subscribed, that your notifications are turned on, and drop a comment because it feeds the algorithm. Share my stuff around with people you think would like it, but most importantly, share it with people who you know would not like it so they can be a bit ahead of the curve. But most importantly, exercise, eat healthy, sunlight, talk to people in real life, and now you know your vlog. Peace out, peeps. Booyah!
Did you go to a cabin with Miss Willis ever?
Ever?
Ever.
No.
You've never gone to a cabin with Miss Willis?
No.